And now, this.
Okay, let's go. Harry Tracy.
Harry Tracy! Trigger warning. The following contains the authentic accounts of factual historical figures and events. If historical information may upset you, then please withdraw now. Retreat.
Well, I guess you know who I am.
Harry Tracy is a true story. This telling is authored from sources spanning over 120 years. All characterized quotations are verbatim from interviews, newspaper articles, and testimonials taken at the time. Scott Martinez. Part 9. Infamy. Summer of 1902. President Theodore Roosevelt's cabinet secretary George Cortelyou publicly denied stories claiming that the president had closely followed the progress of the manhunt for the Oregon escapee Harry Tracy in Washington state. Cortelyou denied the president was intrigued by Harry Tracy's constant ability to elude pursuers, and further stated that such a trivial story was beneath the interest of the office of the President of the United States. Harry Tracy was in the Eastern and even European press. Sensationalistic versions of Tracy and stories about and sightings of Harry Tracy became ubiquitous and imaginary. Around the country, Harry Tracy was on stage.
New York City! Outlaw Tracy on Bowery stage. It required the efforts of the house policeman to save the sheriff and his posse in Tracy the Outlaw from assault by a hostile audience at the 3rd Avenue Theater, says the New York World.
In Boston,
Yesterday afternoon and evening at the Bowdoin Square Theater, Tracy the Bandit was presented to crowded houses. The generous applause which it received showed the large audience found it sufficient to interest them from beginning to end.
in the Northwest, Manhunt for Harry Tracy, a staged play where past victims told their encounters with the bandit Harry Tracy, included Frank Scott from the NNS, the gasoline launch that Harry had abducted out of Olympia and rode into Seattle, and John Anderson, Harry's indentured servant, cashed in on his celebrity, appearing in several stage plays.
Anderson was on exhibition in Seattle at several different places and netted over $200 in a few days. Anderson, Tracy's hired man at the Bon Marché today. Children should come with their parents as the crowds will be dense. At the 3rd Avenue Theater, Tracy is more of a hero on stage. He is a gentleman, a scholar, a tragedian, a flower of chivalry, a humorist, and a philosopher.
That the average Seattle small boy witnessed the play and he will exchange his birthright for 30-30, kill his father and mother to effect his escape, and journey forth on the road shooting down officers like chipmunks, asking fair maidens to dance and capturing whole regiments of Swedes for body servants. Not since the gold rush had the Northwest gripped the public imagination or garnered this much attention. Many came to view Harry Tracy as a victim of the system, a downtrodden working-class Robin Hood. He's a brick, a jewel, a persecuted man. This mainly due to his captives' reports of his mannerly nature, consistent apologies, and promises of big wads of cash to make things right.
When I get to Seattle, I got friends there.
Question: where is Harry Tracy? Answer: he's everywhere. Harry appeared to be everywhere, certainly in the press, and abundant anecdotal stories. But in the summer of 1902, from July 15th to July 30th, Harry Tracy was considered officially missing.
No sign of Tracy. Lost all trace of the convict. Tracy is still out of sight.
Wednesday, July 30th, at the home of Sam McAdowney's, 6 miles out of Wenatchee, Tracy's first well-documented appearance east of the Cascades.
Sam, I see you don't remember me.
My God, it's Harry Tracy.
Sam had known Tracy in Portland before Harry's convictions. Harry found Sam's horses unsatisfactory and required Sam to steal some horses from his nearest neighbor.
Don't leave the premises for 24 hours or tell anyone I was here.
Tracy declared he planned to ride east across Washington, Idaho, Montana, and into Wyoming, back to join friends at Hole in the Wall. The west side of Washington state is far more populated than eastern Washington, and the political power is centered there now as it was then, Olympia being the capital. The Puget Sound region is hemmed in by mountains, the Olympic Mountain Range to the west, Mount Baker to the north, and the Cascades to the east, including Mount Rainier. The ocean and the mountains promote a coastal marine layer where rain and clouds and drizzle can be continual. So wet and forested is the west side of Washington state that it has established the national reputation for the entire state.
The Evergreen State.
Washington's nickname was first proposed in 1890 by Charles T. Conover of Seattle. The Cascade Mountains separate the state, and the western area captures most of the rain. The rain shadow of the Cascades create diverse and even desert-like terrains in eastern Washington, partially decorating it with volcanic rock, scablands, and cliffs. Central Washington is plains-like, grass fields and land ripe for agriculture, wide open country. Sheriff Brown of Kickatas County, the summer of 1902, understood the difference between the western and the eastern sides of the Cascade Mountains and what it meant for Harry Tracy.
Should Harry Tracy emerge from the cover of the Puget Sound forest and head down the eastern slope, it will be a question of speed, not strategy. Nature will not aid him in providing a safe retreat at every turn, and field glasses rather than bloodhounds will come into question.
Sheriff Cudahy was not stopping at the border of the Cascades and declared he would pursue Harry Tracy.
Tracy can only pass over the mountain range at 2 points. One is to follow up the Green River Valley across the Stampede Pass where the Northern Pacific goes through. The other is to take the partly completed state road built in 1896 that leads from the White River Pass to the headwaters of the Yakima. The latter is a difficult route and uninhabited the entire distance.
A warning to Cudahy.
The August 5th Spokesman Review ran the following salutation from a note found pinned to the well of farmer C.V. Drazon.
To whom it may concern, tell Cudahy to take a tumble and let me alone, or I will fix him plenty. I'll be on my way to Wyoming. If your horses was any good, I would swap with you. Thanks for the cool drink. Harry Tracy.
In 1902, Coulee City had 7 gambling halls in town and a population of just over 100. Sheriff Cudahy arrived in Coulee City shortly after noon on August 2nd. The next day, after 2 in the afternoon, Cudahy headed for Edwall, seeking to block Harry Tracy's path. But Harry had gone along Wilson Creek, just south of the town of Almira. Local lore says that Harry stayed in some caves there that to this day are called Tracy's Caves. In the open prairie, about 10 miles south of Creston, Washington, Harry surprised a young lad named George Goldfinch.
Why, that'd be the Eddy place, sir, run by Lou and Jean Eddy, who are brothers.
When Tracy came to the ranch Sunday morning, accompanied by young Goldfinch, he subjugated and enslaved us in his own inimitable style. First, I had to unsaddle and feed his horses. Tracy worked all of Monday, August 4th, and much of the next day helping build a barn with the Eddies. Well, he made himself useful around the place. We were putting up a barn, and Tracy spent much of his time carrying boards and nailing on the roof. He was a first-class worker. Tuesday morning, August 5th, young George Goldfinch decided to inform the law that Harry Tracy was holed up at the Eddy Brothers Ranch. Goldfinch rode into Creston and telegraphed Sheriff Jerry H. Gardner in Davenport, 15 miles to the east. The telegraph made plans to meet with the sheriff and his men and lead them to the Eddy place. Joe Morrison was in the telegraph office at the time, as well as Maurice Smith, who contacted 3 other Creston citizens, Constable C.A. Staub, Dr. C.E. Lanter, and Oscar Lillengreen. These men became known as the Creston Posse. The Creston Posse hired a buggy and team and took off to the Eddy place, arriving in time to have a gun battle.
Who are those men with guns?
Tracy bolted from where he was working on the barn, and the Creston posse opened fire. Returning fire, Harry Tracy had just reached a large rock in the middle of the field, some 200 yards from the posse, when he violently lunged forward, grabbing his right leg. Harry Tracy had been hit. 3 different posse members later declared credit for the shot. The initial exchange took only moments, but a long standoff soon ensued, Tracy at the foot of a large rock holding them off with an occasional shot. With the dangerous fugitive Tracy wounded but living, the Creston posse decided it was the best move to wait him out. The sun slowly waned, finally setting well after 9. Sheriff Gardner and his men from Davenport arrived, surrounding the field. The night took hold, and Harry made a move into the wheat field. The posse saw the stalks moving and opened up with a barrage of bullets. About 10:30 p.m., a single shot cracked the silence of the night. There was suspicion and speculation as to what just happened, but it was too dark for anyone to see anything clearly, and none of the posse members volunteered to brave the dark. In the morning light, they found Harry Tracy, 2 bullet holes in his leg, a tourniquet tied atop in an attempt to stop the bleeding. There was a revolver in his right hand. As a result of a self-inflicted gunshot wound, above his right eye, there was a gaping hole in Harry's forehead. That was Harry Tracy's final escape.
Murderer Tracy sends a bullet into his brain. Tracy is dead. Wounded by a posse, he ends his troubles and shoots himself rather than be captured alive. Tragic fate befalls noted Oregon outlaw. Tracy's last fight, Desperado died by his own hand. Tracy killed himself when at last cornered. Shots fired by pursuing posse had broken the leg and severed an artery, and death was inevitable. Crowd of relic seekers strips the body of gory souvenirs.
Harry Tracy's corpse was wrapped in a tarp and taken to Davenport.
Seek Tracy relics. Dead bandits' goods are badly scattered.
In Davenport, a growing and aggressive crowd.
There was a large wound in the right forehead, and the left leg below the knee was shattered. With the tourniquet, his leather belt still in place.
I Touched Harry Tracy's Corpse by Charles May Anderson, M.D., was published in the Pacific Northwesterner the fall of 1973.
Some of the crowd broke in and started cutting Tracy's clothes, shoestrings, hair, and even his gun belt for souvenirs, but they were quickly pushed out.
Dr. Anderson, a childhood resident of Davenport, was 11 years old in August of 1902 when Tracy's remains were secured in the back room of his older brother's store.
This was my first introduction to the macabre nature of men, but was macabre enough myself to squeeze his shattered leg. It was mushy, as if there were sand in it.
Tracy's exit. The bold outlaw, surprised and mortally injured. The glory is due to the Creston men alone.
The Davenport mortician who prepared Harry Tracy's body. The posse got off more than 30 shots to no more than 4 or 5 from Tracy. Too much like shooting fish in a barrel. Maurice Smith, a local attorney and member of the Creston posse, examined Tracy's rifle and found the front sight bent out of position. I believed it had struck the house-sized rock when Tracy dived into the green at its base. Harry Tracy was placed in a plain zinc-lined box and put aboard a train to Portland. Constable Staub of the Creston posse sat on the box the entire trip. Souvenir hunters would have cut so many hunks off that there wouldn't have been much left.
Career of Tracy ends. Harry Tracy's body on the way to Salem.
Acid had been poured on the face to discourage body snatchers from attempting to steal Tracy's remains to sell.
Convict's dead face burned by vitriol before burial. Tracy's body buried.
Some accounts have Harry Tracy buried next to David Merrill, but all the graves were unmarked and later covered over with fill and then concrete as part of prison expansion.
Remains were covered in quicklime and buried. Tracy's finish, cold in death from a self-inflicted wound.
There was no burial ceremony for Harry Tracy, and he was best eulogized by Joseph D. Lee, superintendent of the Oregon State Penitentiary, in his biennial report, 1902.
Without a dollar of estate, with a reputation for crime only, while yet a young man, his sun set in darkness, and his remains lie unhonored in a prison cemetery.
Harry lived on in legend, in stage plays and popular dime novels, silent films, comic books, television, and movies. And as the infamy of Tracy slowly faded into a shadowy remembrance, Harry Tracy, the cold-blooded killing convict and last of the wild bunch, quickly became a relic of the previous century. And in the end, it was not the guards at the Oregon State Penitentiary nor the hundreds of armed sheriff's posse members, military and newspaper men in hot pursuit that proved able to corner and kill Harry. It took young George Goldfinch and his own act of courage to defy the direct threats of a confirmed killer, to contact and coordinate the authorities to corner Tracy. It took Harry Tracy himself to kill Harry Tracy. So if you watch that whole video, you're pretty cool.
The preceding was one part of a 9-part project. To watch the next part, click here. Or to view the entire Harry Tracy documentary, click here. Well, that's just damn good news.